Welcome back to Module 3, and we're going to cover safety with God. I think that's probably a real key component of us trusting ourselves, the universe, and God included. So we're going to start there and look at this. Now, I noticed, I'm just going to say this kind of briefly. As I've worked through this, I have tweaked it in the middle of the process. So some of the things you saw earlier, there were going to be two components of God. I've arranged that, I've shifted that, and I'm going to do it a little bit longer. And also, I'm attached another thing at the other end. So you'll see that. And just to give you a heads up as why it suddenly looks different. So I got into a creative moment and decided to change. All right. As you see here, we're covering the third part of this module, safety with God. Now, in session 3.1, one of the things we're going to do is we're going to talk about your journey or story with God. I'm going to ask you, we're going to look at what is your God perspective. That's really vital because our perspective is our lens on life. It's how we see and paint the universe around us is through our perspective. And then we're going to look at the 3 steps in this whole journey. All right? Now, my journey with God started out, I grew up in the church. My dad was under the firm belief that the doors opened, I was going to be there, along with all his family. And Dad was there with us, whether he stayed awake or not. When he worked all night and then showed up there, he was going to be there. You know, God wanted him there. He might have slept through the sermon, but he was there. Now, so it was part of our family ritual. It was a part of our life. So part of my early part of the journey was that. When I got into young adulthood, I wanted my life to be different. I didn't want to be a mess. I didn't want to make a lot of mistakes early in my life. As a young man in seminary, I really wanted to get it right. So everything I thought I had been told to do to be a godly man and a godly husband and all this, I upped it. I really hustled so that I'd be enough because I had some of those perspectives in me. And so my journey was like that. And so for 25 years, I constantly tried to do the right things and hustle because in my mind there was this formula through my teaching that if I did X, God was going to do Y, and I'd end up with Z. That meant I was good, that God was good to me. That meant I was blessed. Well, I woke up 25 plus years later and realized I didn't have Z. It definitely wasn't even on the alphabet what I had. It was like, it sucked. I suddenly realized, well, what happened here? What went wrong? I did everything I was told to do. I thought I had done everything on the X. Why isn't God done Y? Because I don't get the Z. There's a real struggle then because then it's like my whole universe began to shake. I don't trust anything I was taught. It's like what I thought, that explicit knowledge. Remember, we talked about that part of the brain. And that's that outer knowledge. That's what I've been told. Well, in my community, religious community, everything I'd been taught was my explicit knowledge. It was what I was taught. That was out here. Now, implicit knowledge is what I knew in here. It's what I knew to be true with me. Whether I needed to work harder than the others in the church because I just was a mess. I needed to hustle harder. I needed to do more because I had so much further to go in my own mind. Well, this caused a lot of conflict within my own self and my own spiritual life and what I trusted and what I didn't trust because my God perspective was based on a God that I don't have today, that's for sure. It causes inner conflict and turmoil inside of me. Now, when that goes on and I am covered in shame, guess who takes over driving my bus for me? Yeah, the monkey. And it's like, I'm not going to make it in this tribe. I'm not going to make it in this community. I'm not going to make it with God because somehow or another I can't get my act together. And then what? Yeah, because we go through meltdown. That's part of this whole thing of when suddenly we realize how much we maybe have been betrayed in a relationship or how far life has gone and we've been betrayed maybe we thought by God. And all of a sudden everything melts down. We go into meltdown of this whole thing. Well, when that happens, guess who's driving your bus? Yeah, the monkey. And then we go into the freeze, the fight, the forage, the flight, or the fornicate. I mean, it's like the brain is going to seek comfort one way or the other. And remember what I said earlier. Once that hits that 10, the brain's going to look for comfort in itself within 24 to 72 hours. So guess what? Yeah, we're going to go out there and we're really going to do some crazy stuff. Now, I know that I hit that point in my life when I came down to that point where it's like, I can't. I've done everything I know to do. I can't do any more. There's nothing left in me. And I still end up with Z. Now, I was really frustrated. I realized that My marriage had fallen apart. My career was falling apart. I didn't know what to do. I kind of suddenly realized I didn't have the marriage I thought I'd given myself for. Now I don't have me because I gave myself up for something I couldn't keep. And I was really angry. I thought, wait a minute, I did what I thought was X. I didn't get Z. So I went out in the backyard and had a little talk with God. And along with it, I took all that stuff that I've been hauling around and trying to do all those years, and I took it out in the backyard with me with a can of gas and a match. And I burned it all up. And I told God, I says, I'm done with the X. You're God. You do the Y, or the X and the Y business didn't work for me. I'm not enough. I didn't measure up. Now, I'm done. All those years of praying and hours of praying, you never did what I told you to do, and I had some good ideas here. You wouldn't listen to me, so I'm going to shut up now. Of course, heaven probably rejoiced at that moment. I says, but what I'm going to do is this. I'm wiping everything off the table, and I'm going to listen to you. And because I'm very ADD, I'll give you 2 minutes. You're sovereign. I'm not. And you tell me what I need to know. And if you don't tell me, then fine. And I'm going to write down what you tell me. That began to change my universe. I created this place called Tahiti. I'd never been there, but I had this idea of this grass hut. And it's in a lagoon surrounded by these palm trees and sandy beach and quiet. And it's just me. I never get out there. I never leave. I'm just there. Boom, I'm there. So I just go to Tahiti. And then it's popping me. And I sit on the edge of that little porch-like thing, hanging my feet off of the edge right above the water. And I envision Papa being there with me, talking to me. That's my term of endearment with my Heavenly Father. And I say, okay, here we are. We're out here in the hut. If you got anything to say, I'm going to be quiet. I'm going to run my mouth. I'm going to listen. And lo and behold, he began to talk. And I heard him say, I'm proud of you. And over time, I began to hear other things like, you're more than enough, Eli. You're more than enough. He began to speak to the wounds in my life. He began to correct the stories in my head about me. One day I heard him say, I had struggled with this. It really blew my mind. I went for a week or so and not hearing anything. I just said, okay, I'm sitting here. And then I'll go back to an old story. Somehow or another, I hadn't done something right. Somehow or another, I've messed up. Or God's mad at me or something. I'm a mess. So I said, what happened? Why aren't you talking to me? And it just seemed like shortly after I just felt this chuckle. And he says, Eli, I've been here all along. I just wanted to sit with you. I just wanted to be with you. I didn't know we needed to talk. I like being with you, Eli, because I like you. Now, you could have picked me off the floor after that. Are you sure about this? And it took me a year to get this. It took me a long time to get through and to really begin to believe this. I said, tell me again, Papa, do you really like me? Now, over time I learned that silence is the language God speaks, and everything else is just a bad translation. I began to learn where God says, be still and know that I'm God. Cease striving and fretting. It leads to evil doing anyway. So I began to learn is that hear truth from God in my safe place and wrote it into my journal. God began to change my perspective. That is a perspective changer. I didn't need to go out and hustle for my worthiness. I didn't need to go out and be better or be more or whatever else. I just needed to be and to listen. Now, this daily habit is one of these things that's going to reduce your anxiety. I want you to create your own safe place. Give it a name, a simple name. And I want you to see it in your mind with clarity. You can even smell the airs and hear the breeze, whatever it is, and name that place and take a deep breath and slowly let it out. I would be doing Tahiti. Now listen for 2 minutes. Just listen. Ask God to speak to you and just listen. Sometimes you may hear something, sometimes you may not. And then when you finish, take another deep breath and say to yourself your safe place name. Mine would be Tahiti, along with the breath. Now, this is where I'm going to encourage you. The fourth one would be is then write your impressions in your journal. Remember what Psalms 37:7 and 46:10 says, be still. And here's a hint. Ask God to tell you what he thinks of you. And when you hear it, whatever it is, write it down. Now, one of the things that I heard from me was, son, I have you back. You're my workmanship, and I'm still at work. Trust me, son, trust me. And I realized that I can't. I need to surrender that. And God stepped into my life, and he began to change my perspective. He began to change or offer me an alternative story in my head about me and how he saw me. It began to change inside out my perspective of God. Now, here's your assignment I want you to do. This next week, I want you to write out, or the next few days, however long it takes, write out your God story. See if you can put it in phases. Your childhood, young adulthood, adult, and if you're a senior like me, your older life. Now write down your perspective of what God was in each of those phases. What shifted you from the next one phase to the next? I want you to observe and be aware. Okay? Practice the assignment of listening to God now. Put that into your repertoire of tools every day. And this is the end of session